No kidding.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't either. We started digging into it.
That was my phone number last time.
Oh, is he?
I didn't do anything.
Yeah, I didn't suspect it. We make our opinions known if we want to. We ready? Today's are going to be.
Where I work at
Yeah.
night.
This is an interesting case, the history of that farm. I've driven by it for 50 years.
Is this more?
That memory when I go into Zoom meetings.
First moved here, there were a few big farms.
Nate did hear
Getz Farm.
Blue Sewell.
It was
He said last month that he went
Where's
in.
that?
Getz Farm before,
Did
it
he?
was a Zimmerman farm, but I don't know for sure.
It gets farm at one point, but
From
maybe.
what I
It was
understood,
last month that he
Getz
wasn't,
land
because he was on this.
He was on Zoom last month, but he said he wouldn't. be.
Firstburg
Oh, I
Pike
didn't-
to Knoll Road, and from McGovernville Road to Centerville
Is that
Road.
right? Okay.
But he owned that whole thing. And so
Divvying out the kids.
it was, he had signed
Senility.
a sheepskin title signed by William Penn.
Is that right? Yeah, that was originally.
I saw it.
Yeah, did you really?
Yes.
Okay, guys.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, at this time, I'll call the July meeting of the East Hempfield Township Zoning Hearing Board to order. Members present this evening are Mr. Hanson, Mr. Kyle, Mr. Bingham, and myself. Also, we have with us our legal counsel, Jason Hess, our planner, Nate Sturgis, and our zoning officer, Beth Graham. We have tonight one new case and any other old business that may come before our agenda this evening. This board will hear this case in an informal matter without strict compliance with rules, procedures used in a court trial. We'll ask the applicant and any individuals interested in this case to step in front of our table and explain the circumstances involved in their application. Applicants may present their case themselves or through their attorneys or other representatives. Fellow board members and I, as well as our solicitor, may ask the applicant questions from time to time during the applicant's presentation or at its conclusion. All persons having an interest in the application will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, to offer evidence of their own, and to inform the board of their position on the matter. In the interest of a prompt and orderly disposition of this case, we will ask interested people to refrain from speaking, until the applicant's presentation has been completed and the board has had the opportunity to question the applicant. At the beginning of the case, people who are interested in the case should decide whether they desire to be parties to it. By being given the status of a party, that person will be entitled to receive notice of the decision in the case and will be entitled to participate in any subsequent appeal or rehearing. Individuals who are not given party status may nevertheless ask questions and present evidence, but will not receive notice of the decision and will not automatically be entitled to participate in any appeal or subsequent hearing. If you desire to be a party to this case, we will ask that you sign an entry of appearance form at the appropriate time. And although each party in this case will receive a written copy of the decision, mechanics and typing the decision takes approximately 4 weeks. We ask that each person who asks a question or makes a statement first state his or her name and address for the court reporter. So at this time, I will administer the oath of affirmation to all the applicants and to everyone and anyone who anticipates making any statement with respect to this hearing this evening. So at this time, would you all rise, please? Under penalties of perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please say I do. Before we do that, Nate, is there anybody on Zoom?
There's one person, they haven't identified themselves.
Okay. Please rise and salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Just so everyone knows, beside public being present, we're also on Zoom. So the person on Zoom, before you can ask any questions or make any statements, we will have to make sure that you are sworn in. Gentlemen, you have received the minutes of the June 20th meeting, of the board minutes of the June 20th meeting. If there are no additions, deletions, or corrections, I'll listen to a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Hanson to
Second.
approve the minutes, seconded by Mr. Bingham. Any discussion, gentlemen? Seeing none, Mr. Hanson,
In favor.
Mr. Kyle,
In favor.
Mr. Bingham,
In favor.
and I'll also vote in favor. The board minutes of June 20th, 2022 have been accepted and approved. Nate, or Beth, excuse me, any old business,
No,
new business?
just case number 2450, Robert B. Moeller, 2343 Harrisburg Pike, requesting a variance to allow a two-family conversion in an agricultural holding zone property.
Okay, is Mr. Moeller or his representative present? Okay. Before we go there, is there anyone in the audience and or on Zoom that wants to be a party to this case? Seeing none. Again, would you like to come to the microphone? Again, just state your name, and you can, if two of you are going to be there, you can also use the other microphone if you want to just take it off that stand, bring it over.
My name's Aaron Marinas from Russell Craft and Gruber. Here with Robert and Jennifer Moeller. You can introduce yourself.
Name is Robert Moeller, and
I'm Jennifer Moeller.
Just before you, I presume your address is the 2343? Okay, just so Cheryl knows. Thank you. Thank you. Please continue.
So the property is, I just give you a little overview of this before we get into our testimony and evidence. The property is a 6.3 acre parcel in the agricultural holding zone. It's improved with a farmhouse, a barn, and a shed. Right now, we are requesting a variance from section 270.314, capital B 2A, to permit 3 dwelling units on the property. I'm phrasing it that way because there are 2 dwelling units in one building, which I guess is a 2-family conversion under your zoning ordinance, and the other would be a single family detached dwelling. the agricultural holding zone only allows single-family detached dwellings. So however we get there, we're asking for permission for 3 separate dwelling units on the property. If it matters what they are called, I suppose we can get into that testimony more, but just hoping to jump right to the end. We'll show that this property has been used for 3 dwelling units for a long time. And just over the last 10 or 15 years, it hasn't been, but we are going to try to make the case that it is a protected non-conforming use that hasn't been abandoned by the lot owners. So again, whether you give us a variance for the use now or find that it is a protected non-conforming use that has not been legally abandoned, doesn't matter to the landowners. They would just like permission for this. So we're putting forth both of these legal theories sort of in the alternative for you to consider.
Excuse me, Mr. Marinas, you said that property hasn't been used for 3 dwelling units in over 8 to 15 years. Is that correct?
Something like 10 years, I believe.
In that case, the use would have been considered abandoned after 1 full year of not being used, correct, Nate?
Yes.
Under the ordinance.
Under the ordinance. So I think probably the best way for you to approach this is going to be for the variance to the 2 or 314.
I understand. I think, and I'll leave this to Mr. Hess to say, but those provisions in an ordinance that say they're abandoned after a year isn't the final word on that. I believe they create a rebuttable presumption of abandonment that can be overcome by showing the landowners didn't intend to fully abandon it. I think that's where the law is. Hopefully we don't have to get there, but that's the only, I don't want to bring anything to waste the board's time, but I do think that there's a legal argument there. So again, we won't dwell on that, but I wanted to bring it up before we started.
Just one point about that, though, is that if it was a valid non-conforming use that hadn't been abandoned, I think the procedure would be to request a zoning permit and establish that it hasn't been abandoned. And then if the zoning officer grants that permit, great. If the zoning officer says does not grant it, then you would appeal that to the board and say that it's a non-conforming use that should have been granted.
So with that overlong explanation out of the way, I'd like to get to our testimony and call Robert Mueller, sorry. You can sit down if you want to. Mr. Mueller, you were sworn in and you swore to tell the truth. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you reside at the property at 2343 Harrisburg Pike, is that correct?
I do with my wife.
And your wife, that property's been in your wife's family for a long time, is that true?
My wife has lived there, either there or across the street her entire life, like 2 years, maybe in an apartment somewhere, but for 77 years, she's lived at that property.
I have a couple exhibits that have been pre-marked. I'll look at Exhibit A1, which was also included in the application. Can you tell me what that is?
That is our home. It's where the property on the central property, the larger of the 3, is a home built in 1890. It's a brick 2-story farmhouse, and then the building to the left of that is a 5-car garage, which served as a for the dairy across the street that was owned by her parents, and which I use as a wood shop and mechanical, like garage, just not commercial, just for my own cars and so forth. And then the unit marked number 3 is a barn that has a storage in the bottom and a single efficiency apartment in the top.
And the distances and measurements you have there, those are, did you measure those yourself, or those approximate? Or
Yeah, I measured them. I measured them, and I believe they're accurate. They're not surveyed or anything, but they're consistent, they're 5 or 10 feet.
And when did you say the main
Excuse me one
farmhouse was
second.
built?
Are you picking everything up for the minutes? On the tape?
I'm sure, excuse me, I'm sure the mic's not picking up now.
Could you take it off or raise it up just so you're
Is
speaking
that
a little
better?
closer?
Okay.
Okay. Excuse me and thank you.
And when did you say the farmhouse was built?
The farmhouse was built in 1890. There were foundations before that. There was a home goes back to the 1700s. The foundations go back to 1700s, but there's a stone on it that was built in 1890 by Jen's great-great-grandfather. So
Can you describe the physical characteristics and topography of the property? See Swar Run and Miller's Run and the forested nature.
yeah, everything behind the 3 units towards Schwar Run is pretty much floodplain. There is the building to the right of our property is owned by LASA, and there is an easement that runs through our property for.
Point there, that
Oh,
the zoning
okay.
hearing board members can see.
Push the green button. Okay, so this building here is LASA, and there's a sewage line that runs through there, an easement for that on there. But this Schwar Run and Miller's Run are both on our property. We have it stocked for the Fish and Game Commission stocks it for fishing. We allow fishing by the public. It's a beautiful property. My wife has this area here, probably 2 acres and like gardens, just informal Victorian gardens. It's a Victorian farm home. It's a lot to maintain, and it's good. I mean, we're very proud of it.
I want to show you what's marked as Exhibit A2 from Google Maps.
Okay.
Probably don't have that up there. So the red mark is your property, is that right?
That is correct.
And it's mostly covered by woods.
Yeah, it has some of the oldest and largest trees. There's a ginkgo tree that's 14-foot circumference right in front of our home, which is Jen's pride and joy. There's a elm that's listed on 2 elms that are listed on. It was one of the largest in the state for that species. So we have a lot of really, and there's a dawn redwood tree. So we have a lot of really interesting and distinctive forest trees.
In the picture below this, that shows just the street view of the entrance to your property.
Yes.
Is that ginkgo tree that you talked about?
The ginkgo tree is the one behind this elm tree and
Okay.
right along the road, but it's one of the largest ginkgos that we've ever seen.
I want you to going to shift gears a little bit and describe the use of the property that you're requesting with the 3 units, the 3 rental units on it. So if we could go back to the A1. And if you could point out, so the farmhouse you have listed as units 1 and 2, is that correct?
That's correct.
Which unit would you live in full-time?
Yeah, my wife and I have always lived in this one here, the one on the right, and then the one on the left. The house is equally divided approximately by square footage. There's 3 bedrooms on this side and 3 bedrooms on this side. Both sides have a full bath, and both sides have 2 entrances. So there's at least 2 entrances. There's actually 3 on this side.
And unit 3, you said there's an efficiency.
Yeah.
How is that located?
Unit 3 is here. There's a stairwell that goes up to an entrance on the 2nd floor, and the 1st floor is storage.
And unit 3 is furnished with the bathroom and kitchen and all that, is right?
My brothers went to college there, and her son lived there for many years, and it's great for a small, single person or single person really.
And you said that in the past, these units were rented out. Can you
Absolutely.
describe some of when that happened and when it stopped?
Yeah, I met Jen, and, Jen's first husband passed away in 1991. We met and were married in 1995. And when we met, this house, the side of this house was rented out by a tenant, and her son lived here in the barn. So from 1995 until, we were digging through our memory or recollection of exactly when, but in 2009, my brother left here, and that's when the people residing in there stopped. And in 2012, to the best of our recollection, is when the last tenant was here. So that was 10 years ago. But we're not, we're not really great landlords. We don't like collecting rent. That's not our profession. And we really didn't want the hassle, but we continued. There's three electrical feeds to our property, one for the barn and the garage, and then one for each of the two sides of the house. And we've been paying 3 electrical bills ever since I came in 1991.
So when you say 3 electrical feeds, there's 3 separate meters and 3 separate
Yeah.
bills?
3 100 amp circuit, electrical outlets, and we pay for distribution charges for each of those. So as far as I'm concerned, we've been renting it to ourselves for 3 years.
So just very briefly, why do you want to rent it now after 10 or 12 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's an extremely expensive property to maintain. We have put tens of thousands of dollars in it, and we want to see it utilized to its best and fullest use. It's just the two of us living here on 6 acres. Jen is just maintaining the gardens and the grounds, mowing and so forth. It's a lot of upkeep and maintenance, and we intend to travel. So we still will use this property if this variance is granted. We intend to have a management company because, like I said, we're not the best landlords. We'll hire people that will manage the 2 properties as long-term rentals.
Where can you describe the access and the parking to the various units here?
Yeah, so there's one driveway entering here, it's macadam, and then there's 4 parking spots in front of the garages, and there's 3 parking spots over here on a gravel parking area. So there's a total of 7 parking spots. We've had, like I've said, we've had 3 different. We have had all 3 of these units rented, and we've never had issues with parking. We have 2 cars for another tenant. 1 or 2 cars for the efficiency, and we're fine. We don't have any intention of making new parking or expanding our parking options. But there's tons of space for that if we ever needed to do that and get approval for that.
Are you going to make any exterior modifications to any of the buildings here?
Not at all. I mean, we're very careful to keep the home consistent with its historical history. We've kept the smokehouse that's there. We've kept the squirrel tail oven, things that we could have easily gotten rid of. So no, we've been really careful to maintain the appearance and the character of an old farmhouse, much like her house here.
So the farmhouse, for instance, do you still have 2 separate entrances that have been maintained?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's one in the front. It's a grand entrance, which would be part of the unit 2. And then our entrance here, there's porches on the front on both sides. So there's areas to congregate. It's well suited for 2 families. And we were talking on the way here that it's been rented as 2 families since the 1940s for sure. And Jen was born in 1944, and she remembers 2 families living there, when she was a child.
And you never did anything to tear out the second kitchen, or when
No.
you stopped renting it 10 years ago?
Now we still have two kitchens, 2 sinks. Some of the appliances will be refreshed before we re-rent, but the outlets and it's still there. 2 bathrooms, and everything's been maintained.
Did you ever have an intention to stop renting them forever?
Yeah, this is new to me. I had no idea there was such a rule or such a thing. I had no idea that we couldn't continue to rent it. You know, when I found out that we needed to go through this process and that there was that the zoning didn't allow us to rent it, I was very surprised. So,
So can the property be used for agricultural purposes?
in a very limited way. I mean, you know, like I said, it's on floodplain, so this area back here is all, you know, and there's trees, you know, we kept it, you know, very natural, you know, so there's not a lot of land, you know, contiguous land for large fields, you know, maybe half an acre or something like that.
You feel like you need a variance to allow a reasonable use of the property?
Absolutely.
I want you to look at one last exhibit. Is A3. Is that your property outlined in red?
Yes.
And you can see there's a lot of buildup surrounding your property. Is that a fair sort of general statement?
Absolutely.
Do you think that using your property for 3 rental units, or, you know, for 3 dwelling units would have any adverse impact on the surrounding area on Harrisburg Pike?
Not at all. I mean, nothing more than, you know, like the strip mall that's behind us and, you know, the commercial space that's across the road from us, or the sewage pumping station that's next to us. So it's commercial on all 3 sides, and except for the off to the left here. So this area here is another farmhouse that this house was actually built by the Getzes as well. So these 3 farmhouses were built by the Getzes.
Think it'll have any, would this variance alter the character of the surrounding neighborhood at all?
Like I said, this property has been used this way more, you know, the last 100 years, it's been used more as multifamily dwelling than not. You know, it's only the last 10 years that we haven't been using it that way.
Is there anything else that you'd like the zoning hearing board to know about your proposed use of this property that we haven't covered yet?
You know, I mean, you know, this is something that, you know, we really value the history of the property. You know, we've invested a lot of time and energy into maintaining it as a historical property. And, you know, we don't feel that this is in any way detracting from that historical use. So
The preservation of the property is the most important thing to you, and you're not going to jeopardize that.
absolutely. And, you know, like the, you know, alternatives, you know, to have the house torn down, have the, you know, turn it into a strip mall, shopping mall, you know, those are things that are really, you know, abhorrent to us. So we, you know, we prefer, you know, Jen, you know, Jen does not ever want to see, you know, the history that her family has here, you know, turned into something else. So
That's all the questions that I have right now. The board will probably ask some questions.
Mr. Hanson?
Mr. Mueller, or Mr. Marines, do you have a better picture of the quote unquote barn, or where the efficiency unit is going to be? Because driving by your property, you normally do that once a day. You can see the house, you can see the garage. You can't see where this other unit's going to be.
yeah, I can, we can supply that. It's a
Is that
20
it
by
right
30.
there?
It's this building here, like right here. This is the building here. It's 30 foot by 20 foot. And it was originally a pole structure barn, and it was improved way before 1990 in the 80s or 70s or 80s. And it's a beautiful, I mean, the interesting part about that is because the garages are here, it shelters that unit from the road noise, and it's actually quiet. It's the only property piece on our property that's really quiet. And, you know, so and my brothers always tell me about how it was fantastic for them when they were 18 and 20. So it's a perfect little place for somebody to live, you know, in an efficiency apartment. It's certainly not raise a large family there. It's a 1-person apartment.
I don't have so much of a problem with the house being rented out as two-family dwelling, because a lot of the old farmhouses were built that way. So that doesn't bother me so much as the efficiency. And I understand that you have no intention of doing anything below board here, but one of the conditions that I would want to put on this is that if the property is ever sold, or two conditions. Number one, you folks live in one half, correct?
We live in one half of.
The house,
One half of this house. yeah,
right?
That's correct.
One of the conditions I would put on is that in order for this variance to stay with the property, the homeowners must live in one of the houses.
That would be fine with me.
That's fine with you? Okay. The other issue is, unfortunately, none of us are going to live forever. And the other condition I would put in is that if the property is sold down the road, again, homeowner must live in half the house or they can't continue to lease them. Is that agreeable?
And I have no problem with that. The concern being, so if, obviously, like you said, if nobody lives forever, but if we ever did sell this, so I'm thinking of, if we were not planning on selling, that's why we're here. But, like you said, we don't know what our life expectancy is. In the event, I want to make sure that the value of our property is not detracted. We're so in the event that my wife and I both pass away, or we decide to sell it, down the road 5 years from now, what would we end up with? We'd be back where we are now, is what you're saying. I think that, if we ever do sell it, just looking at all the commercial property and the development around us, when we do sell it, it'll be sold as something other than what it is now. So, I don't have any problems with that. Short term, like I said, we have no interest, no immediate plans of selling it and moving.
The reason we do this is because normally a variance will stay with the property for perpetuity.
Okay.
Unfortunately, after you're long gone, somebody could try and put rental properties up there and it could still be an ag holding. We don't want that to happen. That's why I want to make that condition.
Yeah, I think as long as, like, if we did sell it, if I understand what you're saying, if we did sell it and to an owner that wanted to continue to live there, you'd be okay with that?
Yes.
That would be fine with
the
it.
variance would still continue.
Right, so the variance would not die with us. The variance would die with somebody wanting to do something different.
Correct.
We're perfectly fine with that.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Any other questions, gentlemen?
Are you're okay with that? I don't want to speak for you.
Okay, back to the barn, pole barn, whatever. Do you have any idea, or does your wife have any idea when that pole barn was converted from a pole barn / agricultural type uses to first floor storage, second floor residential dwelling unit?
Yeah, as we were going through looking at the different times, Nathan lived there when he was 18 and he's 50 now. So 55, he's 55 now. So 70s or 80s.
70s or 80s?
That predated my, association with the property.
Understand. Okay. Jason? Questions?
Yes, sir.
of the applicant?
And yeah, I have a couple. So, and you kept fixtures in the both other rental properties. Are there still like fixtures, stove, okay.
They've been heated, we've had the heat turned down to minimal amounts, but they've been, it's been space that we simply haven't used. So, we've been paying, for 3 units, basically. It's as if we have continued to rent them, only not collecting rent.
Okay, and you've kept the electric on that entire time?
Absolutely.
Okay,
The only utility we canceled was cable. Actually, when we rented them, one of the hardest things was cable wasn't in our area. So we didn't have cable on our property for a long time. So we have, but we have had, we've had all the utilities that are necessary to live there. So anybody could have lived there for the last 10 years in any of the 3 properties.
still working plumbing and all
Yeah.
that?
I mean, one time the plumbing froze and we fixed it, but yeah, it's been there. Nothing's been taken out.
And the property right behind it, what's that used for?
Little teeny barn, I think if you're referring to this little property, like, so this is our house, there's a
Right.
little teeny barn right here, which is I don't know what happened.
Sorry, I took the map a moment. He was speaking about this.
Right, not on your property, but the lot behind you.
Oh, no, this is a preschool. This is
Okay.
Chester Brook Academy Preschool. This used to be Golden Meadows Swim Center.
Oh, right.
Golden
okay.
Meadows, and then this became a reality church. And when I refer to the strip mall, there's a whole bunch of different businesses here.
Okay,
And
okay. And it's the property right to the east of you that's Lassa?
the property, yeah, and interestingly, that property was sitting for 20 years doing absolutely nothing. They built that for capacity and then they turned it on about 4 to 5 years ago. And it makes a giant noise.
And the property to the west of you is still used for residential?
It is. I believe that's also an agricultural holding. Yes.
Okay, I think those are the questions I had.
Just to follow up on Mr. Hess's questions, Lassa building with the access road coming in, if I look on applicant's exhibit number 3, it looks like there's a little rectangle. There is a separate property. You see what I'm seeing?
Are you thinking about this?
Oh,
This is a
it
giant
goes
sign.
back as far, it goes from the Harrisburg Pike, at least on the picture, goes back to the driveway.
There's a driveway.
Yeah, now, from the driveway west over to that,
Yeah, I mean, this thing here is a gigantic sign that was put there that has like
Right.
all of the businesses there. So there's a sign and this is an electrical feed for that sign.
but that, what is in that rectangular, is that owned by Lassa or is that another property owner? Do you know?
We own to right here. So everything that's mowed belongs to the reality church and that conglomerate up there. I think the property line for, Lassa owns like to here. I think Lassa owns this property. But
Yeah.
this sign, when they put that sign there, they initially built it too close to the road and then they had to move it and it was, it was a big mess.
It was a
So-
clear sight triangle problem. Yeah, well, can we get rid of that box?
Yeah, one moment. It's pulling up the property owner information, potentially.
You see the blue line or turquoise or, yeah, right there. Do you know who owns that?
I assumed that was owned by these people up here. I don't know. I mean, this sign is for all these businesses.
Yeah,
So this part here, I believe was part of this. My
it's shown
understanding
as a
was,
separate parcel.
Mr. Herman, the risk of giving testimony, I remember talking to, back when that was Golden Meadows, talking to the owner, and I think that's the same owner. Or
Okay.
was at least back then, because they were talking about putting a house or something there on that little parcel. I think that's why it's.
Okay,
By
that's
separate.
fine. I just want to clarify whether that,
it's
since
news
it's
to me.
separately designated who actually owns it, but you're saying you do not.
We do not own that.
Okay. Okay. Beth, do you have any questions of the applicant?
I do not.
Nate?
I do not know.
Okay, anyone in the gentlemen, any other questions? Anyone in the audience and or on Zoom have any questions of the witness? Nothing on Zoom? Okay, that's nothing. Mr. Mueller, thank you. Very nice. No other witnesses? Okay. Nothing up here. Is there anyone in the audience and or on Zoom, excuse me, that have any comments, either pro or con to this application?
Nope.
Seeing none. No other comments, gentlemen, questions? Mr. Kyle.
Does the township have an official position on this case? Guess that'd be a question maybe for Nate. I mean, nobody's.
No, we do not know.
Okay. Yep. Okay, if there are no other questions, nothing more to add? Okay, with that, then we will conclude testimony in case number 2453. There is no administrative notice to be aware of, and we will admit into evidence along with the application, applicants exhibits 1, 2, and 3, which are maps. Seeing that there's nothing else, gentlemen, I will listen. A motion. If there is one.
Mr. Chairman, case number 2450, the request of Robert Mueller for property located at 2343 Harrisburg Pike, Lancaster, PA 17601. Make a motion to grant the request for a variance to section 270-3.14B2A with the following conditions, or let me back up, to grant their variance request to allow for one multifamily rental unit consisting of 2 units in the main house and a 3rd unit in the barn. With the following conditions: 1, our standard conditions. 2, that if the Muellers or any future owners of the property fail to live on the property, the variance will go away.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. Motion, case number
2450.
or 2450. To request of Robert Mueller for the property at 2343 Harrisburg Pike, 17601, to grant a variance to section 270-3.14B2A to allow for multifamily housing on the property as follows. Main structure residential unit to have 2 units and 1 efficiency unit in the structure designated as the barn with the following conditions. 1, failure of the Muellers or any other owner of the property this variance shall cease to exist if the owner of the property or future owner of the property does not live in one of the 2 units of the main residential structure. And 2, standard conditions of this board.
Correct.
Do I have a second, gentlemen?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bingham. Discussion,
Um,
Mr. Hanson.
normally, something like this I would be not in favor of, but since the Mullers have a history going back on this property, and I think they intend to use it with all good intentions, that's why I'm gonna go ahead and approve this variance request.
Any other comments?
I've been driving past your home for probably 50 years, somewhere in that range, and always admired the house and how well it's been maintained. And we're at your request.
My only comment is similar to Mr. Hanson's. I really have no problem with the 2 residential units in the main dwelling, since a lot of the old farmhouses were built such for big families, and in today's society, I could see where they're divided. I did have some concern with the unit in the barn. I think this is a special case where I'll put my, I guess you'd say prejudice aside, since the zoning ordinance does not allow multifamily in this area, but since the structure, at least the residence has been there for eons, I will
100 years
also
possibly.
vote in favor of it. No other comments, gentlemen? Mr. Hanson, how do you vote?
In favor.
Mr. Kyle?
In favor?
Mr. Bingham?
In favor.
And I'll also vote in favor. Your request for a variance to allow 3 residential dwelling units on the property has been granted. Now, gentlemen, I will make a motion that we deny the request for the continuation of non-conforming use under section 270-6.2. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hanson. Discussion? Mr. Hanson?
In favor.
Mr. Kyle?
In favor?
Mr. Bingham?
In favor.
And I also vote in favor. Your request for a continuance of a non-conforming use has been denied. Thank you. Beth, any additional cases?
Not this time.
Not this time. Beth, what about next month?
Yes. There are 2. Next month, we have Always Never Done with their coffee truck and Root Property Solar Field.
I would suggest you tell them that they get their parking up to township standards if they want anything from this board.
I'll fill you in more.
Okay.
Isn't too bad.
That's not it.
No, it is.
Oh.
As usual, I believe the deadline for submittal is this Friday, so.
Yeah, well, that's.
So we could actually
We could have
have,
another one
Could have another one.
or 2.
Cheryl, you available on the 15th? Jason? Indeed. Gentlemen, I know Mr. Kyle will not be, he said he could call in if we need him, if we don't have the quorum, so keep that in mind if find out somebody won't be here. Seeing no other business, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
so now that we're adjourned, what's the procedure, Nate, for the zoning